Please join me in welcoming the 20th president of Michigan State University, Luann Case.
Kim didn't see me come in, so I said presidents can be very sneaky at times. Well, it's a pleasure to have a chance to spend a little time with you. Bob gave us each 20 minutes, and with Kim and I didn't practice this, but what we might do is I'll do about 10. You may want to do longer, and we'll do questions together at the end if that's worked out for you all, rather than sort of bifurcating them into two spots. I think that'll work out a bit better. This is a very interesting time for Michigan State. If you think about our history, and you think about the 19th century Spartans, the 19th century university, we were prototypes and pathbreakers. We were prepared as an institution well before the Moral Act to chart a new course for higher education. We did that boldly, we did that unabashedly, and we did that in a way that opened the doors to talented people across socioeconomic class. We did that in a way that infused the best science, the best methodology into what we did as an institution. And we took on the task of being able to blend the liberal arts and the practical in ways that were really messy at times. And students had to sort of have their own community engagement activities by helping build the campus. And then reach out from the campus to the community. The 20th century Spartans were the same kind of bold path breakers and leaders, developing the prototype for the global university. The work that occurred in this institution in that period of time took that idea of opening our doors and welcomed all those veterans and folks back from World War II. Very aggressive as an institution in welcoming and opening the doors for groups that had been discriminated against in the United States, racial minorities, by having the first Detroit Project, having John Hanna be actively involved in the civil rights movement, as well as having this global focus, this global university, this prototype of what universities want to be now. We were there first. Spartans led the way. The challenge now is how to take that boldness, that capacity for being the prototype before the script is written. Because in each of those moments, the script wasn't written. It's easy to look back on that now and see what universities did. But the script was not written at the moment those Spartans made that decision. We have the same opportunity to write the script for the 21st century. That's us. The opportunity for people to look back at this moment in time for the 21st century and say, we were the prototype for. We were prepared to open the doors for. We were prepared to build communities around the world because. We were prepared as an institution to take the land-grant spirit, the land-grant values, and not simply us going global, but have it grow globally. To create this network of institutions, this network of partners who believe in that spirit, who believe in those values, and are prepared to deal with the most difficult problems in the world. And to do that in a way that everyone, given their talent and their passion, has the opportunity to be a global scholar, to be a difference maker where they live and where they are, where they can reach around the world. That's us. That's Spartans for the 21st century. Our collective challenge is to recognize that at each one of those points in time, our finances were fragile. You can look at the metrics, you can look at what other folks had. We had no buildings in the beginning. They had buildings. They had people who were giving them money. They had people who were prepared to spend a lot of money to help them support what they were doing. We didn't have that. We didn't have that for this 20th century Spartans either. Our finances were always fragile. John Hannon was always going to use the tuition from the next students to pay for something. But that didn't deter us. We were creative. We were passionate. And we were tenacious in not letting what would be normal roadblocks of institutions to be able to deter our big aspirations and our work on behalf of the globe and others. That's us now. It's still fragile. The challenge collectively is finding that spirit in some of those mundane words that you all have put on the page. And not falling in the trap of having this fill in the gaps of the things we've lost. Because this place is about assets and about moving forward. It is not about gap filling. And our collective challenge is to figure out how to make that real for people in this state, in this community, and around the globe. And have people feel that excitement and feel that confidence in Michigan State that we will be that prototype for the 21st century when people look back on this moment in time. And we can't settle for anything less. We can't settle for anything less, no matter how difficult. That if we can build that spirit, that confidence, then we have the capacity to have this capital campaign be spectacular and have the institution have that resource, that venture capital, that stability it will need for the future. The stability will come from this kind of campaign, not from state appropriations. And tuition's not going to be able to be raised at the rate we've been doing it. It's not going to work financially. So this is the moment. This is the moment. And that's what we have to be able to convey to folks. Now we can talk about how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it, and all the challenges that might occur in doing it. But we are going to do it. We are going to do it. And we're going to do it as a team, and we're going to do it with you being a very important part of that team. So let me pause there, give the Provost a chance to talk about academic directions, and we'll come back and answer questions.
Chief Academic Officer. Unfortunately, though, as Chief Academic Officer, I don't oftentimes get a chance to do academics. My background is in spectral and temporal analyses of speech signals, and it's hard to fit that into too many public lectures. But, although I could if you wanted. But I did just happen to finish reading a book about campaigns. And I thought I'd chat a little bit about that book this morning, because I think it fits a bit here. Now, the book is called The Soul of Battle by Victor Davis Hanson, who's a guy I've read a couple of books by. I realize it's being streamed. I don't want to sound like a history critic. He's a little wordy for me sometimes, a little opinionated, but the book was a compelling one for me. And it makes the point about three great generals in history. One of them, before the 19th century Spartans, the 5th century BC, Epaminondas, who was a Greek general who actually brought down the Spartan nation. Williamson comes to Sherman, of course, in his March to the Sea, and George S. Patton. Hanson makes the point that in all of Western history, these three generals and these three campaigns stand out as different from all the rest in a few key markers. Number one, they were conducted by truly citizen soldiers, people who were not professional soldiers and didn't spend their time practicing to be soldiers. They rose up really from nowhere, fought some of the greatest battles in history, and faded away just as quickly. Patton's army was the Third Army in Europe. It was the ragtag group, the group that no one thought would do much. It was the leftovers. Patton was in trouble with his superiors, and they kind of put him on the sideline and gave him the last people they had, the Roundups. Sherman led the Army of the West, which is really the Middle West from today's standards: Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Western Kentucky. The guys that didn't have much for uniforms, most of them were barefoot, the people who weren't supposed to do much. And Epaminondas, in the 5th century BC, put together a group of farmers from the middle of Greece who were just fed up with Sparta. The Spartans every few years would march through the countryside and lay waste to things and then go home. And they just, and the monks in particular, just got tired of it. The reason, of course, the Spartans could do that was because they held most of their region in slavery. They didn't have to work at anything but being good soldiers. They had all of the farming done for them, all the work done for them by these people that they kept under their close control. The reason, of course, the South was able to manage as well as it did for 100 years in the United States was because it kept millions of people in slavery. And we all know about Nazi Europe. These three armies of just regular people rose up, marched into enemy territory, hundreds, in the case of Patton, thousands of miles, and did something not for themselves, but for others. All the other great campaigns of history were generally for conquest. Alexander, Caesar, Hitler, Stalin, they were all campaigns of conquest. They were done for their own egos. These three armies rose up, not for themselves, but for others. They were united in some kind of common goal and achieved more in less time with fewer provisions than most any other armies in the history of the world. Hansen makes the point that this is a rare occurrence when people come together with such a selfless task to make a difference and then go back humbly to their regular business. And it struck me that that's in some ways what a capital campaign is. For us to stop for a minute, think about what the future might be, all of us to set aside our regular day-to-day activities and rise up together to achieve something that we couldn't do otherwise. Now, I'm not suggesting we march into enemy territory. No one needs to put their lives at risk. But at the same time, there is something about a campaign, the word campaign, that we take, I think, sometimes for granted. And certainly reading about those three generals and their armies made me think differently about what a campaign really is. Now, there's another reason I bring up the book, because it strikes me that we're fortunate to live in a world where we can afford to pay somebody like Victor Davis Hanson, who actually works in the Cal State system, to simply think about centuries of history and draw conclusions and lessons and statements and stories from it. And, of course, he lives in a university like ours, and you all help create and maintain an environment that lets people like Hansen and so many others do things that we as a society are privileged to have happen. We spend a lot of time talking about people. You'll hear the president talk about people in Team MSU because that's dear to her heart. It's also simply a practical reality. Well over 80%, probably 90% of our budget at the university goes to people. Particularly set aside the capital construction pieces, it's people. And even scholarships. We think of scholarships as helping students, that's true. But what happens to the scholarship money? It goes into the coffer and we spend it on people's salaries. So whatever happens around here generally touches people. And we, as a group, have a commitment to not only maintaining a group of the very best people, but hopefully growing that corpus in a way that makes the power of the university stronger than it was before. When I got here in 2005, we got about $15–16 million a year from our endowment holdings that went from the endowment corpus earnings right back into operating the academic operation. We're now up to about $26 million. That's money, as the president just talked about, tuition can't do it all anymore. That's money that we can regularly count on coming from our holdings to support people. People with the same kinds of academic aspirations as Hansen. People with the same kind of notion about looking at history or looking at the future, in the case of biotechnology and medicine, and thinking thoughts that will make a difference. It's a pretty profound task that we're about here at a university, and your role in that task is no smaller than anyone else's. It's crucial to the success of Michigan State University. So today, I guess I'd like us just to think a little bit about what a campaign means in terms of a sense of purpose and cause and unity, and think a little bit about what the collective of our activities mean for us as a university. The ability to hold and nurture a group of people who do things few others in the world that are privileged to have the chance to do. Thank you.